Um, but yes, I mean, many Chinese emperors. Well, for example, even here, Ranjit Singh, for example, apart from his wife, he also had a number of um, male as well as female concubines. And so, this is this whole business of, and many, I mean, Frederick the Great of Germany, Alexander the Great, Julius Caesar. The idea that, that this thing is sort of restricted to some countries and is not found in other countries, it's a human thing. And God knows, I mean, it's going to continue to be a human thing regardless of what strictures come down from on high.
Or judgments from Supreme Courts.
That was a way of saying it. So I would say, as far as translating it is concerned, I haven't. And on the whole, I tend to translate poetry more than prose. But I'm sure there are excellent translations. Where did you read this translation? You haven't read the translation. I'm sure there are some. There must be some in English. Yeah. Okay, sorry, you can't hear at the back. I'll just repeat. The gentleman said he's only read essays about them. But yeah, it is something that. Why didn't you learn Chinese, young man? I'm just kidding. No, it's not that. What I meant is in order to translate it. Fine. Well, thank you for tying the two together. It's a very, very interesting point indeed.
This might just jog your memory a little bit.
Sorry, where are you?
Left.
Oh, right. The lady in pink.
This might jog your memory a little bit, Vikram, but I want to bring you back to what you'd said about home. And I think a lot of people might be interested, considering you're a global figure of great renown. You speak about you've come, you've seen, now stay, just now, and then a word from home is
worth a ton of gold.
Yes.
Yes.
As a global poet, way back in Singapore when you were visiting, I remember interviewing you and covering the wonderful libretto you'd written, Arian and the Dolphin. And you'd been asked a question about what you felt about home. And you gave, in your characteristic manner, you had said, home is not necessarily a place where they want you to stay.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. I filched that from Robert Frost.
Yes, I know.
Robert Frost said, home is the place where if you have to go, they have to let you in.
Yes, but...
It's another... sorry, but I didn't mean to interrupt, but could we get a question, perhaps?
Yes, the question to you is, so what does home mean to you as a diasporic, or how do you see yourself?
Well, the Chinese have a word for this. They call them Hua Qiao, which is like overseas Chinese. And it's a very, very... it's a disyllabic phrase. We have only, to some extent, lately realized, what you could call the Hua Yin, or the overseas Indian, as a kind of community, or, all this Pravasi stuff that's happening. But the Chinese, for example, have this lovely poem, which every Chinese person knows about, resting your head and looking up at the moon and looking down and thinking of home. I did write a poem once called Homeless. But at that time, I didn't think I'd have any money to have a home of my own. And that poem perhaps will answer your question in a kind of way. I'm not sure I'll remember it right, and I expect anyone who has been forced to read me for school will correct me, but here it is. Homeless. I envy those who have a house of their own, who can say their feet rest on what is theirs alone, who do not live in sufferance, in strangers' shells, as my family has all my life, and as I probably will. A place on the earth, untenured, grass, brick, trees, air, to know I will never have to move, to review the seasons from one lair, when night comes, to lie down at peace, to know that I shall die where I have slept, that things will not revert to a stranger's hand, that those I love may keep what I have kept. By the way, there was a misquotation there, but I don't know quite the order of grass, trees, and air. Yeah. Should we just, I think, be Could someone stand with the mic right at the back as well? Otherwise, the people at the back will never get to answer questions.
So this young
Yes.
gentleman.
Yeah. I'll take your questions first, and then I'll take a couple of questions right at the back. Yes.
We can't hear you. I'm sorry. Take this.
Okay. Yeah, we can share a mic, and then yeah.
Sir,
Sure.
what influences your poetry? Is there anything particular that you're influenced by?
Well, love and lust and life. I don't know. I mean, basically, whatever interests me, in a funny way, whatever grabs my attention or the attention of my muse. It could be something very personal, or it could be something very political. Say, I've written about Tiananmen, or the killing of Steve Biko, or many other political subjects as well. Or it could be something in nature. I mean, one of the great things about poetry is that it's short, or usually short, and so it can build on the impulse of a moment. Whereas if you write a novel, then of course there are periods when you may not be fully engaged in your subject, but you're just continuing to write, hoping that later you can revise out the bits that don't work. With poetry, I think quite often there is this aspect of an intense, or sometimes it's very an odd juxtaposition. For example, sitting under in the shadow of Queen Victoria's building and in the shadow of her laws, for example. That's an interesting subject in its own right. So it could be anything, really, that moves one, or that makes one amused, or angry, or happy, or provides food for thought. Now, right at the very back, please. Yes. Meanwhile, while the mic travels to you, I'll answer your question. Yes.
Sir,
Please take a mic to the gentleman at the back. Thank you.
From Heaven's Lake has some ethereally beautiful passages. So, in contrast to that, there is a book by Perles Buck, The Good Earth, which is also about famine in China. But it is so practical. It's just about it's lucid language. It's everyday. It consists of everyday language. So, what would you say? You were an economist yourself. Perles Buck was a doctor. She saw the suffering of the people directly.
Right.
So, what would you say were the differences between you and Perles Buck?
Well, you've mentioned some already. But I just think one of the good things. Look, let me answer this not in an evasive way, but just a part of my general philosophy of literature is that it's different strokes for different folks. She could no more write like me than I could like her. You've got to be yourself, basically. You can't just, contort your feelings as a writer or your feelings as a human being to please an idea of what good writing is like, or what correct behavior or deportment is like. So I would also say that it's great that there are people who write in different styles, even about the same subject. Now take Jane Austen. She was writing in the middle of the Napoleonic Wars. But other than the so-and-so regiment being, billeted at Blankshire, there's not much about it. And yet other people were writing about the nitty-gritty of that war. Similarly, when people say, oh, Indian literature in English even, it's a completely narrow field. Why are you so different one from another? Why is someone writing magic realism, someone writing... Well, it's all to the good that people write in different styles and in different ways, even about the same part of the world. So all I'm saying is, I can't explain why I don't write in her style, but I'm glad I don't, and I can't explain why she doesn't write in mine, but I'm even gladder that she doesn't.
Or didn't. We've been warned that we have 5 minutes, so we'll take a couple more questions before you do your final reading. Yeah.
Hi Vikram, as a fan of yours from one's early youth, I've always wondered what your take is on the Nobel. I consider you're a truly cross-cultural, in my eyes, well, there are a lot of complex issues here, but nonetheless, just your take on the Nobel,
Well, you're talking about the Nobel Prize for Economics, aren't you?
Yeah, well, sure.
Uh, well, listen, eventually you've got to realize that many things in life are decided by committees, right? Or by groups of people who make decisions which can affect, in some cases, the lives of tens of millions of people, decided in a matter of half an hour. Or not very important subjects like who gets some prize or the other. You know, the Nobel, I can understand. I mean, let's look at what's happened. Many good books and good writers haven't got it. Many good writers have got it. Many bad writers haven't got it, and many bad writers have got it. So, really, even the most noteworthy of prizes have to be taken for what they are. They are prizes. They're not anything more than that. And what really matters, let's put it this way, is not prizes, not even good reviews necessarily, not even sales of, however many thousands of copies you want to sell. After all, my poetry doesn't sell that many copies, and I love writing it as much as I like writing prose, in fact, in some ways even more. What really matters is this, that writing is a very private process, and reading is a very private process. And more than all of this stuff, in fact, more even than, I should say, without trying to sound, graceless or ungracious, more even than sort of meeting the author, etc., is this. Writing by yourself alone in a room, and some months later, or some years later, or even after you're dead, someone saying, look to her mother, look, Mama, please keep dinner for me. I know it's getting cold, but look, I'm reading this book. Don't disturb me. And one of the nicest compliments that was paid to me by a friend was this. I went in to call him out to do something, and he got really angry. He said, I'm reading. So I looked, and I saw that he was reading me. And I got rather cross, but then I thought, he couldn't have paid me a greater compliment. That's what matters more than prizes.
You've been waiting for a while yet. Last question, I think.
Good afternoon, sir. It's a pleasure to be here today.
It's nice to be addressed as sir by two people. Shar. Fine.
Sir, I have one observation to make regarding the ending of...
No, I'm sorry. Are you going to talk about A Suitable Boy?
Yeah.
No, I'm sorry. Please do not give the ending away.
No, I won't absolutely no. So I've been wondering, how do I tell you my observation? I can't say that in front of you.
Quite so.
So how do we deal with this problem?
We don't. The answer is to you read the sequel. Of course, I've got to write it first.
But sir, please, I must tell you this. I've been...
Okay, do tell me, but please bear in mind the fact, A, that Lata, quite apart from her wedding in whom she married, if she married anyone at all, which we don't know, she's lived 60 years since then, and she's had a married life. Happy, unhappy, or whatever, we don't know, okay? So do bear that in mind. Secondly, bear my feelings as a writer. And remember that I wrote the book, but I also wrote about people who have independent thoughts and minds of their own. So it wasn't entirely my decision. And thirdly, please bear in mind the audience, many of whom have not read the book. So do ask the question.
I can derive inspiration from her in the next book. I'm facing
Oh,
the
dear.
exact dilemma as Lata is.
Yes.
And I really draw inspiration from my character.
Well, listen, I said earlier that you've got to be yourself. And Lata had to be herself, given whatever her experiences were, her thoughts were. But in your case, just don't go by fiction, okay? Do what you have to do.
But then you should
Be
speak
brave.
to my father.
Is your father
He's
in the
not
audience?
there. You should talk to him.
Well, when you come up to me, bringing your book perhaps, or even bringing a piece of paper, I'll write him a very severe note.
Please, I have everything with me. I have paper, I have a pen. You must write something for me, please.
Right, that's the next half hour.
Right,
gone.
I don't know how
But,
much weight my words will carry.
But
Now-
I'll have to call this session to a close. I know because I'm, someone is making furious signals from the sidelines. And so we'll have Bikram, Bikram, I should call you Bikram in Kolkata. Na?
Amader Bikram.
Amader Bikram, porbe. ठीक.
And I was born in the Elgin nursing home at 1:52 in the afternoon. So, I mean, I don't know what that means in terms of my Janam Patri or whatever, but still, it seems to, whenever I come here, I feel happy, frankly.
Good,
now.
good.
Yeah.
আমাদের বিক্রমের শেষ কথা মানে for the moment.
Yeah. Actually, talk about I should also mention that not only Katha, it's also Kavita. What happened was my mother was having, when she was pregnant, a friend of hers was reading Rabindranath Thakur's Sheshir Kavita. And the rather wimpy hero, Amit, she was so taken by him that she decided that if it was a girl, it would be Amita, and if it's a boy, it's Amit. So, in fact, in the Elgin Nursing Home birth certificate, my name is Amit Seth. And it was only my father's side of the family which vetoed it. So it's cut out in pencil, and Vikram is written because Vijay was the eldest son's first son. The second son's first son was Vinod. Vijay, and so they decided it had to begin with a V. Luckily, it wasn't Vinash or Vikrit. But anyway, let's see. It could have been, Vineet or something else. Luckily, it was Vikram. So there it is.
Yeah.
Look, this is The Rat and the Ox. Beastly Tales consists of 10 poems. 2 from the Panchtantra, so that's India. 2 from Chinese tales. 2 from Aesop's Fable, so that's Greece. 2 from tales from Ukraine, and then there are 2 I wrote myself, The Elephant and the Tragopan, based on a kind of northeastern Zuku Valley, Nagaland ecological event, and one based upon the idea of art and literature and music, The Frog and the Nightingale. So what I'll read is The Rat and the Ox, because the Chinese, as you know, have rat ears, tiger ears, dragon, and so on. I, by the way, am a dragon, therefore very auspicious. The Rat and the Ox. And what it is, well, anyway. So the order of the zodiac matters very much. Who is top rat or top ox or whatever, yeah. Once the Chinese zodiac wandered slightly off its track, and a scholar deity was assigned to go and see what the gods could do about it, for they couldn't do without it. Since the zodiac had swerved, everything had topsy-turved. All the years had gone awry, springs were cold and monsoons dry. Bears came out of hibernation in midwinter with elation. Then they saw the sky and scowled, shook their frozen fists and growled. Rabbits raged and voles grew vicious. All these signs were inauspicious, and the gods were much resented by a world so discontented. So the deity descended, and until his task was ended, workaholically obsessed, he took neither food nor rest, but with undiminished vigor questioned every fact and figure, size of sunspots, times of tides, weights of whitefish, and besides cross-examined train commuters, crunched the data in computers, tested truths, refuted guesses, curved his T's and crossed his S's, asked the planets piercing questions, took down sensible suggestions, went to the original sources, studied all impinging forces, multiplied his calculations, grilled the sages of 6 nations, and to the celestial court made this interim report after 33 years. Gods and godlings, it appears that the 12-year zodiac will resume its former track if we hasten to assign gods to make it toe the line. Gods? What kind of gods? My lords, if I may, you mean with swords? Not exactly. Well, what then? Who precisely are these men? Well, my lords, not men. Then what? Here's the list of gods I've got. When the gods looked down the list, they hired a psychiatrist. Only when he said he'd found that the godlings' brains were sound, did they read the list once more. Rabbit, monkey, tiger, boar, dog, sheep, dragon, ox, cock, snake, horse, and rat. There's some mistake. You've made a fool of us. This is quite ridiculous. It's an interim report, came the godling's mild retort. If you quash my findings, I could make a second try. But it might take 5 and 50. No, the gods cried, somewhat swiftly. No, we're sure you're right. Sorry we were impolite. Please, don't be offended. Do what you have recommended. Yes, we do endorse it. and when final, we'll enforce it. When the godling went again to the world of beasts and men, he assigned, then tried to steer each beast to his proper year. Several animals objected to the years that he'd selected. Sheep and dog, for instance, hated to be harshly separated, and the boar, assigned the rear, threatened to boycott his year. Both the tiger and the rabbit felt the other should inhabit distant regions, and the sheep silently began to weep. Why he wept was never clear, so it can't be stated here. While the snake and dragon hissed, we can never coexist. Why is he my next door neighbor? But at last, with love and labor, pleas and patience, they agreed to accept the pressing need to control the zodiac and bring peace and order back. Only one refused, and that selfish creature was the rat. Now the rat was always reckoned difficult, and so the second year had been assigned to him, though in fact his claims were rather dim to the quite unprecedented honor that this represented. But the rat was far from grateful, and he screamed in accents hateful, "Are you trying to ignore me? Why has this ox been placed before me? Equity has been denied, merit has been thrust aside. Justice, faith, and truth have gone." On he screamed, and on and on.